Thank you very much, Chair. So I would like to present today the work we are doing about wood, wood identification and arts and lutes of ancient Egypt. I think that this presentation will be more adapted in historical uses, but nevertheless, we are managing a very large program of instruments go to the 18th century. But if I choose today these arps and lutes from the ancient times, this because they are very well represented. Music plays a very important part in ancient Egypt as always as this kind of big civilization. And we have not only the instruments we found in excavations, but a lot of iconographical and epigraphical information coming from temples and tombs. Of course, Egypt is a very big country, and the chronology is very, very large. So I choose for today only the period that goes from 1500 until 300 BC, because it was the beginning of these instruments and the time of the use of wood change. So, as I said before, our work is based in wood anatomy, and for that we have two special collections. One comes directly from the excavations, was found about 5 years ago in Drabul Naga, which is in Luxor, South Egypt, and the other is the collection of Louvre Museum, which has almost between 6 and 8 arts. I will try to follow a little bit this plan only with some, I will show you the collection, the general considerations of the vegetation in Egypt in order to understand what is indigenous or exported, and I will show you also some of the trees that we have identified. So the first one is these 3 arps found in one single tomb in South Luxor. One of them is very, very well decorated, and this collection was studied in situ on the excavations. The other one is 6 arp and lutes conserved in the Louvre Museum, and as the Drabul Naga arps before are all of them for the New Kingdom, the arps of the Louvre Museum have sometimes a very difficult datation. So, first of all, if you know a little bit Egypt, you know that it's a very dry land, very vast, but with a very, very small amount of trees and shrubs. We have only in the northern part very, very poor on trees and shrubs. You can find some species like this Juniperus phoenicia, you can see, and I would like to note, because it's the only conifer which exists in Egypt. The south is a little bit rich. They have some acacias, some tamarics, datar palm, of course, poplar, etc. And very common to all the Nile Valley, you will have also these acacia, tamarics, and palm. Nevertheless, you don't have a very big trees like cedar, firs, or even you cannot read, but in the south is the ebony, necessary to make boats or construction. So very early in history, Egyptians go out towards the east to find these conifers, and into the south for some luxury items like ebony, incense, myrrh, and so on. So how we proceeding? Most of you know how to determine a species or almost a genus. You have the color and so on. But if you are studying historical objects, then the color has been lost completely. The only thing we can do is wood anatomy, to go inside the wood anatomy in the species. And for that, we need to observe the transverse plan, the tangential and the radial plan. And only the combination of the elements, the measurements, can give to you the exactly species. When we are speaking about archaeological objects or pieces of art, so our samples needs to be really very small, and if we have a chance, like in excavations, we have a broken object, so we can go to the cracks, to the bases, etc. You can also make, you can prelevate it with razor blade, but also make some peels or some imprints. But the best way is still to have a razor blade, very thin, and you put on the slide and you mount it directly to the microscope. So when we make a database, of course, and when we are in the site, when we are in Egypt working, we don't have the facilities of the laboratory, so we have our microscope only, and you put directly the sample. When it is possible, it's better to clean the sample in order to make clearly and to see very well the different sections, and also it's more beautiful like that. So, but it's not very easy to read, but when we arrive to the results, also from Dra Abul Nagas or Luxor, or from Louvre Museum, we can constate that the amount of indigenous species were more important than the imported one. For Dra Abul Nagas, so the ancient objects, they use acacia, cordia, ficus, or tamarix, which is very, very local, and only we have, you can see here, only we have one neck, which is in Dalbergia, so imported. Louvre Museum present only 3 indigenous species, acacia, ficus, and sisyphus, and more imported. And this was very astonishing to me, because these objects were dated more or less in the same time. And for me, the imported species must be only or later reparation, or latest period. So I asked, with some parts I mean is modern, for Tilia, or Fagus, or Pinus, I asked to have a C14 in order to verify some parts. And effectively, we can change now the chronology of some of these objects. When they started in the New Kingdom, they use only indigenous species except cedar and ebony. And more we go through the time, the species came from a Levantine period. The same things appear in the other collections, other museums who have a data from the Botanic Garden and the Musée Grenoble. So there is always indigenous species, which still very rare in Egypt, because generally 50% come from abroad. I will show you my 2 imported species we have in the collection, so Dalbergia melanoxylon and this famous cedar. And after, I will pass for those Ficus sycomorus, which is also Amorasi, who was the species more used, because also has a strong connection with ancient goddess Hathor in Egypt. The same case with the acacias. Acacias is valued to make a big trunk, but not enough to build high temples or other kind of constructions, or even the boats for the sea. In the case of Egypt, they prefer cedar or something like that. But it was very used in the antiquity and until now, not for the musical instruments, but for other purpose. As the same as tamarix, always very strong connected with the god Osiris, which is also quite a strong wood, still very used. And the last indigenous species I want to show you is one of Sabotasi that don't exist anymore in Egypt. It was completely decimated by time with the introduction of other fruity species. And so you don't need to see that, but as I say, 50% of the wood Egypt was using in the objects are imported. But this is only valid since 3000 before until the Islamic period. With the Islamic period, this started to change, and today in musical instruments we don't find any more any indigenous wood. No more acacia, no more ficus, no more tamarix. All the instruments are manufactured in Syria, Lebanon wood. So the practice is completely broken. These don't exist anymore. And that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.